Okay, ready when you are. Okay, ready when you are.
All right, just give. Okay, good morning and welcome to our Queens Borough President Hybrid Land Use Public Hearing. This hearing is taking place both in person in the Borough President's Conference Room at 12055 Queens Boulevard in Kew Gardens and on our YouTube channel at Queens Borough President. I am Victoria Garvey, the Land Use Director for Borough President Richards, and I will be chairing this hearing on his behalf. For those who wish to testify virtually and haven't already pre-registered to do so, please visit our website and click on our land use page. If you are attending our public hearing in person, please see our staff to sign up for public speaking time if you have not already done so. Please note your opportunity to speak will follow those who are pre-registered. Written testimony is welcome from those who are unable to testify in person or virtually. All written testimony must be received by 5 p.m. today and may be submitted by email to planning2@queensbp.org or by conventional mail sent to the office of the Queensborough President at 12055 Queens Boulevard, room 226, Kew Gardens, New York, 11424. Lisa, please review how this public hearing will proceed. The instructions. The public hearing shall be conducted in the following manner. The applicant will be called to give a description of the zoning action requested, an explanation of the proposed project, and will respond to any questions from the chair. The floor will then be opened for public speakers. Please listen for your name to be called. Each speaker will have about 3 minutes to give their testimony, and a signal will be heard and notice will be displayed when 3 minutes have passed. When you are called, please identify yourself for the record, and if you are formally speaking as a representative or member of a group, the calendar number or application you're speaking about, and whether you are for or against the item. Then you begin your testimony. At the discretion of the chair, if there is a large number of speakers on any particular item, it may be put on second call. Speakers for and against that item may also be called to testify on an alternating basis. Please note that if you're testifying virtually, you must keep your camera on during your testimony and display your name accurately on Zoom. If at any point you have technical issues, please let our planning staff know in the chat and we will assist you. Thank you for your cooperation. So the chair reserves the right to ask speakers for clarifications or further information regarding the applications or comments. I'm going to go ahead and call the first calendar item.
Item number 1, ULURP number 220305 MMQ. The applicant is JPB Realty Co. LLC, Affected Community Board number 2. Applicant, please begin.
I need the screen. There we go. Thank you. My name is Raymond Levin. I'm of counsel at the law firm Herrick Feinstein. Next slide, please. We represent JPB Realty, which is seeking to acquire the city-owned lot located between its property, which fronts on Van Dam Street, and the curved on-ramp to the Queens Midtown Expressway. The city-owned lot is currently part of Gale Avenue, which is a map street. Next, please. The city-owned lot is shown here in red, and is in a manufacturing zone and also an IBZ zone. So is the applicant's property. There are no residents in this immediate vicinity of this project. Across Van Dam Street is a public storage facility and a Tesla dealership. To the north on Van Dam Street, the other side of the on-ramp is um, Dunkin' Donuts gas station. South of the area is the Borden Avenue, which has the elevated expressway above it. It's about over 130 feet wide. And to the east is the ramp, which sort of curves around the property. It starts at grade at Van Dam Street and runs up until it reaches the elevated expressway. Next. JBZ's property has two warehouses on it, separated by a small open area which is used for parking. The warehouse to the north is 2 stories, first floor about 10,000 feet, and the second floor about 4,000 feet. The warehouse to the south is 1 story and 4,200 square feet, and the city lot is 7,700 square feet. The first floors of both of JPB's buildings are currently leased to delivery service companies, food delivery service companies, the best known of which is Hungry Panda. The second floor in the northern warehouse building is office space for JPB's offices and some administrative spaces for those who are leasing the first floors. The city lot is currently overgrown and trash strewn, and is at times occupied by squatters. Next slide, please. JPB is seeking to have the city lot removed from the city map in order to purchase it. Both a mapping agreement and a restrictive declaration will be required. The mapping agreement will provide for a buffer area between the property and the on-ramp to the expressway. The restrictive declaration will enshrine certain environmental requirements. Next, please. JPB intends to use the city lot once it's acquired as an outdoor eating area. With the repurposing of the southern warehouse and portion of the northern warehouse as restaurant and support space. The applicant, the Barry family, has been in the restaurant business for decades, over 40 years, both father and son. Next, please. This shows is taken on the left is the on-ramp, the beginning of the on-ramp. The lower building in blue is part of the northern warehouse complex, and that's what will be converted into restrooms, a bar area, and entry into the seating area, which will be in the rear. You can also see that the second floor with the windows is the office space above that, the northern warehouse. Next, please. The building with the red cornice on the right is the 4,200 square foot warehouse. That will become kitchen area, food preparation, and there's also a loading dock there for off-street loading. It will support the outdoor eating area. Between it and the larger warehouse, as you can see, you moved up Van Dam Street, is the open area, which is used for parking and also some loading for the other warehouse building. And you can see peeking above the second floor office space. Next, please. This is Borden Avenue with the expressway above. The building on the left is the wall of the smaller southern warehouse. And you can also see the ramp the ramp is coming up to meet the expressway, and you can sneak past the warehouse building, curving around. There is a way to get to that open space, the city-owned lot and behind. Next. And when you've come around the warehouse building, this is where you end up. That is the city-owned lot on the right, and the rear wall of the warehouse on the left. Next. This is another view, shows you the office space on the second floor of the warehouse building, and that blue wall building would be the entrance building to the outdoor space. Next, please. This just shows the relative. The red outline is JPB's property. The yellow outline is what we're looking to acquire from the city. You can see the setback from the ramp. And that's it. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. So I think the main question here is, are you going to have any type of pedestrian crossing improvements here? I know this is a very busy area for car and truck traffic. So that's my first question is, what traffic calming or safe pedestrian crossing measures are you considering here?
Well, it's true. This is an isolated area. We haven't considered any. We've discussed both with city and state DOT, who've signed off on the potential, demapping and purchase. And in our meeting with the community board, that was not raised as a question. Across from us is a self-storage, fairly large self-storage building. So at the present time, we haven't been made aware of any issues, and we'd certainly be happy to listen to anything that anyone would have to say.
Yeah, I do think that that's important here with this site, just being right next to an expressway. It seems like the potential for any type of collision could be raised, especially since there would be increased pedestrian traffic going in and out of this area, potentially. So on the same topic, what types of noise attenuation are you also considering for folks that are going to be sitting outside and eating, next to the expressway?
Yeah. The environmental had some provisions for noise attenuation, but they were not directed at the outside area. They were directed at if, in fact, at some point in the future, there was some development in beyond what we have now, they would keep the indoor noise levels lower. So no, they're at this point, the noise levels are not that significant to have required the environmental review to look at its impact on the on the outside area. So we currently aren't contemplating anything. Obviously, once we're operational, if in fact that becomes an issue, we would have to address it.
I see. And so is there any type of clause talking about any exhaust attenuation as well?
Air quality?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, there is some, but as I said, both of those things, the air quality actually has more to do with where heating and cooling are going to be in our buildings rather than coming off the expressway. So the environmental review, which looked at all of those things, and the city has signed off on, did not raise those as particular issues.
Okay. Lastly, can you talk about any type of sustainable infrastructure or design that you're
Yes.
hoping to incorporate once the site may or may not be acquired?
Well, what we are planning to do in the property that we're looking to acquire, we're going to, I guess, clear it of foliage and whatever, but and we're going to put down a base of permeable tiles or some other material will be permeable. We're going to replant trees that are consistent with both the ramp and our buildings. So yes, we're planning to do those things.
Okay. So I don't have any further questions, but I do just want to emphasize the importance of making sure that there is a safe pedestrian and bike crossing here, you know, in the event that this application is approved. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And I don't believe we have any speakers to testify on this
Well,
item.
we will certainly look at that. I mean, the expressway, you know, is 30 feet in the air, and the crossing of Borden Avenue, which is an extremely wide street, already has a crosswalk. But we will look at that crossing Van Dam. We will certainly look and see what we could do there. Sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So with that, this item is closed and we will move on to our next calendar item.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Calendar item number 2, ULURP number 240186 ZMQ. The applicant is SBR Equities, Inc. and Full Gospel Mission Church of God in Christ. Affected Community Board number 12. Applicant, you may begin.
Thank you, Ms. Atkins, Ms. Garvey, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC. Pleased today to be bringing this application before the Queensborough President. This is the 123-12 Sutphin Boulevard rezoning. We are here with Deacon Lindsay Matthews of the Full Gospel Mission Church, who along with Sam Rabani of SBR Equities are the applicants for this rezoning. We are also joined by Dan Ruzeo, the project architect, and Kevin Williams of GZA Environmental. I'll start with a just brief discussion of the land use rationale behind the application. Dan can then continue with a discussion of architectural aspects, and then the entire applicant team is happy to answer any questions. Next slide. So the rezoning that we have today, and we'll show you further in the maps and photos accompanying the application, is to convert an existing R3A zoning district and R3A C13 district to an R6A and R6A C13 district. What this would do would be to facilitate the proposed building here, an 8-story building, which will have both community facility and residential uses, as will be detailed below. In addition to this action, which would give a home to the Full Gospel Mission Church, which would allow for expanded facilities and the good works that they do in the community, we would also be amending the zoning text to allow for mandatory inclusionary housing at the site, currently penciled out at option 1 with roughly 31 units. The next slide gives the numbers behind the proposed development. This development would be 8 stories plus a cellar. The floor area would be roughly 3.5 FAR, consistent with R6A regulations, with 87,000 square feet of floor area. The building would include roughly 9,800 square feet of cellar and ground floor community facility space for the church, as well as 83,000 square feet of residential use, which would allow for 125 new units. The building would have a base height of 62 feet, would set back 10 feet at the 7th story for a total height of 82 feet. Would provide 56 vehicular and 63 bike parking spaces. And the breakdown of the units would be roughly 38 studios, 56 1-bedrooms, and 31 2-bedrooms. Again, we use option 1 to allow for 31 affordable units here. The next slide is the zoning map. And what's noted on the zoning map is this gap between an R6 district to the north of 123rd Avenue and to the south. And so this property right now, which has been zoned R3 or R3A since 1961, there's an opportunity here to provide for much needed housing in the area, as well as to allow for expanded facilities for the church. The same rationale as to why the R6 districts here are appropriate, as we'll show on the area map, holds for the proposed R6A. So you can see that the proposed rezoning would allow for a contiguous R6, R6A district along this section of Sutphin Boulevard. The next slide, please. This is the tax map, which shows both the southern portion of the rezoning as well as the northern portion north of 123rd Avenue. Again, an R6A would encompass a development site at lot 74. To the north of 123rd Avenue, this would be paired with a C13 district to allow for commercial uses as are currently existing in the area. The next slide is the area map, which I think really tells the story well in terms of why this rezoning is particularly appropriate. You'll have to turn your head sideways to get a picture of that. So we've got Sutphin Boulevard here, a wide street per zoning at 80 feet, which can easily handle the additional density that is proposed pursuant to the rezoning. Indeed, the R6 district has already produced an 8-story building. You can see 2 lots to the south of the property. Baisley Gardens, the apartment building there, already exists at 8 stories. So again, great site access in terms of Sutphin Boulevard, as well as 123rd Avenue on the corner. We are within 300 feet of Rockaway Boulevard to the south, an extra wide street at 100 feet. Commercial uses abound on both Sutphin and Rockaway Boulevard in the area, as well as transportation options. So really this ends up being an excellent site for the additional residential development that is contemplated. In addition to which, there is Baisley Pond Park, which is diagonally across from the property, providing recreation space and an extra wide expanse, which can add to the context of the area. The next slide and the slides that follow show pictures of the site and the surrounding area. I note the picture on the upper right, which is the existing church property and is the lot in question. And this, I think, tells a little bit about why this rezoning is appropriate and is appreciated by the applicants as well as many of the surrounding neighbors. This is a concrete structure built in 1995. The church was attempting to partner with a developer, and this is what was produced and has sat here for close to 30 years. It really kind of speaks to the fact that the church has really struggled and has tried to take advantage of development opportunities and has been really wronged in certain respects. And so the decision right now to move forward with SAM is one that is important to the church in enabling them to provide for additional services for both their congregation and for the larger community. So we're really looking forward to this potential opportunity. The next several slides show development in the surrounding area, including across 123rd Avenue with commercial uses on the ground floor. And I think the next slide as well begins the architectural presentation. I would hand the mic over to Dan Roseo, who can talk about the architectural aspects of the proposal. Dan?
Thank you, Rich, and thank you everyone for your time today. As Rich has said, we're proposing an R6A 8-story mixed-use residential building. Next slide, please. We have approximately 111,000 square feet of total gross floor area planned from cellar to the 8th floor. Next slide, please. This is the zoning map showing the building in the center. The project area would be in the dark center dashed line that you're seeing. We have a utility on the corner. Here is the cellar level. I'm sorry, next slide, please. Cellar level would be primarily occupied by the church with a supplemental residential area to the left and a cellar area, mostly mechanical and refuse storage. Next slide, please. The ground floor is a soft story with mostly residential recreation space, as you're seeing in yellow on the left, and the church space, as you're seeing in the blue on the right. Parking is screened from the street and provided at grade at the rear of the building. The light gray dashed line that you're seeing is the footprint of the building above, over the parking, so it would be partially covered. Next slide, please. This is the typical residential floor. With a mix of studios, 1s and 2s. We do try to provide outdoor space as much as we can for the residents, and you're seeing terraces throughout at the corners of the building to facilitate that. Next slide, please. This is the 8th floor setback. We have a setback that occurs at 7 and 8. You're seeing that at the bottom left with permitted dormers. Again, terraces are continued as practicable throughout. Next slide, please. And at the rooftop, we have further recreation space for the residents of the building facing the park at the lower left-hand corner of the building. The remainder of the rooftop would be used for local law requirements and mechanical requirements for the building. Next slide, please. Here's a section through the building showing how we cut through. Again, partial excavation for a cellar level used primarily for church functions. Ground floor is a soft story that would be primarily parking at the rear recreation space for the residents and the church, and then the residential above. Next slide, please. Cut in another direction through the building. Next slide, please. We wanted to provide a contextual facade that would be both soft and welcoming, but also fit within the community at large. We have a masonry facade with wood planned at the soft story ground floor and at the rooftop. Again, just softening the materials and providing for a welcome aesthetic. Next slide, please. Another view of the building. Next slide, please. This is a view from the north side of the building, which is where the parking access is. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Massings showing us in context with the surrounding environment and the surrounding buildings. Next slide, please. You can see that to the south of the building, we have much taller buildings existing, predating our proposal. Next slide, please. And again, here we are skinned in a combination of masonry and wood for the proposed building. Next slide, please. Soft story across the entire ground floor. You can see here the recreation terrace in pavers at the top of the roof, providing a view of the park and of the school outdoor play area that occurs immediately to the left, shown in green. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Views in context comparing height. As we can see, the R6 buildings that occur further north along Sutphin do bridge the height difference between the existing lower story residential and the existing multifamily in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. A view of the parking area at the rear, as well as the terraces that are proposed for the residents of the building in order to provide some private outdoor space. Next slide, please. From the school area. Next slide, please. And a view of the facade. The residential entry is at the left with the recreation space at the ground floor further right at the left as it's cut off. And then the church entrances and exits with a large soft story presence on the ground floor. Next slide, please. That might be it, actually.
I think that concludes the architectural plans. Thank you, Dan. So just to conclude this portion of the presentation, again, what we have here is an existing R3A district which is bordered by R6 districts. The proposed rezoning would allow for development that would fit in with the surrounding area that takes advantage of excellent access to the site in terms of a wide street, allows for nearby transportation options, and basically creates something, including important community facility space for the church, where right now a concrete one-story structure has sat for the last 3 decades. And with that, the applicant team is happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, everyone. I do have a couple questions. So number one, can you walk me through the part of the rezoning application where you're rezoning parts of lots 57 and 155 from R6 to R3A?
Sure. So, really, Ms. Garvey, what this reflects is the current uneven boundary of the zoning lot. So you can see that the southern portion of the lot is currently partially within the R6 zoning district. So city planning as a corrective action asked us to push the zoning district boundaries both in terms of the center line of the block from Sutphin as well as the southern portion of the additional lot, so as to allow those two lots to be entirely within the R3A. So it really doesn't result in any meaningful change in development, just results in a cleaner zoning map.
Okay, understood. And could you take me through the Community Board 12 feedback from this application?
Sure, happy to do that. I'm going to start with the land use committee, and then I'd have my colleague Amanda Ionati speak to the full board, as I had a conflict that evening and was unable to attend. There was a very spirited discussion with Community Board 12's land use committee. And the discussion was around particulars with regards to the building and design, but essentially one of the, I think the largest, areas of concern was whether or not the church had spoken to its surrounding neighbors and had made an effort to include other stakeholders into this decision-making process. So what they did do after that discussion, because although they'd discussed this with select members of the community, they hadn't really done something broader than that. They hosted a gathering at the church after the land use committee hearing. And from that process of discussion, introducing plans and materials to surrounding neighbors and all of that, we're able to obtain, I think, no fewer than 50 consents of people within the community board and the surrounding area in favor of the application. So I would probably just shift the discussion to Amanda if she can provide any more color with regards to the discussion.
Yeah, sure. Of course. At the full board, some of the conversation continued around the height of the building, community outreach, and then also there were some questions that Kevin Williams of GZA responded to regarding sewer capacity and school seats and impacts related to the EAS. So we had that conversation. There was a back and forth, but ultimately the board did not have any recommendation. There was a motion on the floor that was not seconded, and then there was no vote. So we didn't walk away with any formal recommendation, but we did continue our conversations with the community, and again brought our consents to the meeting and showed the good efforts of the church to spread the word in the community and get support from close neighbors and constituents.
Thank you. That's very helpful to contextualize the application. And so with regard to the church, is the basement space meant to be like a multi-purpose space for other community groups to possibly use if the church is not using that space?
Yeah, I guess Deacon Matthews can answer that to some extent. It's meant to be flexible space. I'm not sure with regards to programming whether or not the church had contemplated other groups using that space as well. Oh, Deacon Matthews, if you're speaking, you're muted.
What happened?
Sounds like someone unmuted.
Yeah, to the extent that there's audio issues, Ms. Garvey, I think it's contemplated that the church currently has space across 123rd Avenue. So I think to the extent that that space has been available to community groups, it would continue to be so. But we can confirm that back to the Queensborough President's office after this hearing.
Okay, because otherwise the community facility space that's being proposed here will be church for the church.
Correct, yes.
Okay, understood. Great. And so my last question here is just any sustainability designs or parts of the project that you could take me through?
Sure, I'd have Dan address that.
Sure. So we would be complying with local law requirements. We will have a blue roof designed into the project in order to facilitate stormwater retention. And we'll obviously comply with 2020 New York City Energy Code, New York Stretch Energy Code requirements, which actually make us some of the most aggressive and energy efficient product in the country that would be introduced. So the project as a whole, obviously rentals and across the board, we would be Energy Star, low flow toilets and everything else that we would do for any kind of a product that we would be installing or developing in New York City. So we have full intention of complying with those requirements. The roof would likely also receive a photovoltaic system on it, again, as required by local law, in order to achieve that. So we would generate some of our own power, perhaps for the public functions and the communal functions of the building.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't believe we have any members of the public testifying on this item today, so I will go ahead and close this item. Thank you, applicant team, for your presentation.
Thank you.
And with that, we will move on to the next and last calendar item.
Calendar item number 3, ULURP number 240311ZMQ. The applicant is Northern 167 Property LLC, affected community board number 7. Please begin.
Good morning. My name is Frank St. Jacques. I'm with Ackerman LLP. We are land use counsel for the applicant in this rezoning. I'm joined by several members of the applicant team. This is sorry, let me share my screen. Sorry about that. I got ahead of myself. So this is this project is a collaboration between 2 local firms, Jun's Construction. Leon Chen from Jun's is here today, and Apex Development. I believe it's just Chris Corrales here from Apex. Andrew Esposito, I believe, had to jump off. Both firms are active and have experience developing within Queens. Just going to walk through some of the neighborhood context and then describe the project. The site is on the north side of 14th Avenue between College Point Boulevard and 123rd Street. And it's highlighted on this zoning map. It was designated as an R4A with a C13 overlay with the approval of the College Point rezoning back in 2005. You can see on this zoning map, and you'll see it in a moment on a land use map, that north of the site is zoned for residential, and south of the site is zoned for mixed commercial and residential and industrial uses. This site is essentially at the edge of a transition area between that residential context to the north. The site is surrounded by several institutional uses, schools and houses of worship. And then College Point Boulevard, as it extends southward, is a mixed commercial corridor. And then moving southward into the east and west of College Point Boulevard, there are manufacturing districts as well as the special College Point district, so representing the more industrial character of the southern edge of College Point. And you can start to see that here on this land use map where the different uses are represented by colors. You can see yellow for residential, moving northward, blue surrounding the site, representing institutional uses, again, schools, houses of worship, and then moving southward, within the overlay for College Point Boulevard, and then several of the M districts that are mapped southward, that mixed non-residential character, including industrial uses moving southward. The development site is outlined here, again, at along 14th Avenue between College Point Boulevard and 123rd Street. It's just over 21,000 square feet, representing that full block front, the entire block front between those 2 streets. And here you can see that in this aerial view, some of the existing context and the site as it exists today. So we are here seeking 2 actions. The first is a zoning map amendment that would change the current R4A C13 to an R6A C24, and also a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area, or MIH area, which would require the provision of permanently income restricted housing as a set aside for the residential floor area of this project. The R6A would allow for an increase in residential density. I'll note that the R4A only allows for 1 and 2 family detached residences, doesn't currently allow multifamily. So the R6A would allow a multifamily development like what is being proposed today. The change to the zoning map is represented here. The current zoning is on the left and the proposal is on the right, essentially taking that block front and changing the R4A to an R6A and updating the commercial overlay from C13 to C24. The proposed actions would facilitate the development of a mixed-use building under quality housing regulations, which is a requirement of the contextual R6A district. This is a 6-story building rising to 65 feet, just over 75,000 square feet of total floor area, 69,000 of which would be residential, and about 6,300 would be commercial floor area. 94 total apartments. The breakdown is shown here between studios, 1s, 2s, and 3s. About 65% studios and 1s, and about 35% 2s and 3s. 28 of which would be permanently income restricted under MIH option 2, and I'll show you that breakdown in a moment. The building has 62 accessory parking spaces. This would include EV charging stations in a ground floor and cellar floor parking garage. And then the building would also provide solar on the roof and potentially green roof. So the MIH breakdown, this is utilizing MIH option 2, would provide 28 permanently income restricted units, 9 at 60% AMI, 10 at 80% AMI, and another 9 at 100% AMI. And here are 2 illustrative massings on the left-hand side. This is from the corner of College Point Boulevard and 14th Avenue. And on the right-hand side, this is from the corner of 14th Avenue and 123rd Street. As I noted, the building rises to 6 stories, but uses dormers along the street frontages. So it's essentially it has 5-story portions, and then you can't see it in these massings, but drops down to 4 stories at the rear of the property. Just show you the illustrative first floor plan to get a sense of the building programming. Above the second floor, it's entirely residential. Above the first floor, it's entirely residential. But on the first floor, there's a mix of the residential lobbies at the southeastern edge of the site. Local retail would wrap College Point Boulevard and 14th Avenue. There is a parking garage, as I noted, split between the first floor with 20 spaces and a balance of 42 spaces in the cellar. The rear of the site would be landscaped and screened from the neighbors to the north. One of the things that the community board had asked for was a dedicated delivery space, so a UPS or a FedEx truck could pull in and not disrupt traffic along College Point Boulevard or 14th Avenue. So we've provided that, easy access into the building's package room and the lobby there. I will also note that the building, in addition to the landscaping at the rear, would also meet the latest 2020 energy code requirements. This would be providing energy efficient, low U factor windows, lighting, Energy Star appliances, and heat pump hot water heaters. I noted the electric vehicle chargers that would be provided within the garage. The building would be fully electrified. And in addition to the dedicated delivery space, one of the community board's recommendations or conditions on their approval was that some additional parking spaces would be provided. That's reflected in this plan, and that the applicant provide that designated delivery space, and that there would be a restriction on certain uses in that commercial space, including cannabis retail and bar use. I'll finally note that June's Construction is a certified MWBE business and a local general contractor. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and the applicant team is happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Frank. Thank you for going through all of those points within the application. I guess I just wanted to ask about the affordability options here. Why option 2 instead of option 1?
You know, our thinking was we've actually our map includes both MIH option 1 and 2. So were the council member to determine that option 1 was more appropriate here, that's still a possibility within this application without modification. We're evaluating some of the market within the area and the affordability, and really thought that providing more units at a range of 60, 80, and 100 would be appropriate for this area rather than fewer units. It's a difference about 4 or 5 units in a project this size. So we thought, more units at a greater range of affordability would be more attractive for this area, given the range of incomes and the need for affordable housing in this area.
Understood. I just want to make it clear that the borough president is very passionate about making sure option 1 is considered in its fullest extent in a lot of new developments. So I just want to emphasize that to the applicant and to you. And just to go over the sustainability elements, I took notes on what you had written about the building design, but in terms of landscaping or tenant space outdoors, can you just walk me through if there are any green roofs here or any other sustainability infrastructure?
Yeah, of course. So the landscape, there's a separation between the northern edge of the building and the rear lot line. So that area would be entirely landscaped. There's not a lot of area within the site that would be paved that's not within the building footprint. Where possible or where needed, we'd use permeable pavers. There's just not a lot of opportunity to do that. With respect to the roof, we're planning on solar. It's a fairly large roof, so if there were to be any additional space that could be a mix between solar and a green roof, that's something that the applicant would consider. At the moment, we're not contemplating, outdoor space, but it's possible on the roof. But just the focus here is on solar. With the potential for green roof, as the design process progresses.
Okay, understood. So at this point, I don't believe we have any speakers registered to testify on this item, so we will go ahead and close the item. So with that, we are out of items for our public hearing today. Our next scheduled hybrid land use public hearing is going to be Thursday, December 5th, 2024, starting at 9:30 a.m. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.